Alright guys, welcome back. So today we're going to be doing something I've wanted to do for so long now, but I've been so busy I haven't had the time to do it. And that is go out and check out some of the local trees that grow around my area here. So I've talked about in a lot of videos before that in Alberta, we don't really have any cool or exciting hardwood trees. You know, most of the 2x4s and that you see at Home Depot will actually come from the area that I live in here, you know, right around the Alberta area. But I really hate working with pine. I really hate working with most coniferous trees because they are just not really fun to work with. I much prefer working with hardwoods or deciduous trees. So what I want to do today is go and find out what trees actually grow in my local area. Now, obviously, I'd have to do a whole tour of Alberta to tell you guys exactly what trees grow all over Alberta. But for today, I want to go out and check out one specific area that I know pretty well. The last time I was out there was before I ever really got into woodwork. So we're going to be heading out to the Waiparous area, which is about an hour outside of Calgary and a little ways up a dirt road. And the reason I'm going out to this area specifically is because in Alberta, every person can get what's called a personal use forest products permit. And so this permit is completely free to get, and it gives you the ability to go and cut down, I believe it's 6 to 7 coniferous trees or 4 to 5 deciduous trees. But for me, before I go and apply for this permit to actually cut down trees, all I want to do is go out and find out what the heck kind of trees grow out here. If all I can find out in that area, because that is one of the areas that is covered by that permit, because if all I can find out there is things like aspens or poplars, you know, woods that are not really great for woodworking, then it's probably not worth the effort of going through and getting the permit and going down and actually cutting out trees. So I will apologize in advance. I don't really have any way of recording the video of driving out there because I don't really have any way to mount this camera in my truck. I don't have and my GoPro that I normally would mount in my truck to get some cool video is just not working for me. But anyway, we're gonna get going with it because I am super excited to just see what's out there. Plus, it's a really nice, cool morning, and I'm excited to just get on the road for a little while. Okay, so I made it out to the Waiparous area. I kind of stopped at the first stop I saw as soon as I got onto the gravel area where we actually have the, or where you could actually use the personal use permit. And so it's just this little off-roading area. Now, I could probably drive my truck down here, but I kind of baby my truck a lot, and I don't particularly want to risk damaging it. Plus, I also had to stop because I remember how much I hate driving down gravel roads. I haven't done it in a few years now, and literally within the first few minutes of, you know, getting up to any kind of real speed, I think I got up to like 60 kilometers an hour going down that gravel road, I already started to fishtail. So one of the downsides to my truck is that because it's 2007, it doesn't have traction control or anything like that, and the bed is just super lightweight. It doesn't weigh anything, so and with a truck, all of your drive is coming from the back anyway, so when there's no weight back there, you tend to fishtail a lot. So I'm trying to make my way over to this groove of trees here. That is kind of what I was looking for. It's kind of the most popular thing to see out here, and I'm not sure what it is. So that's the biggest thing here is I'm just trying to kind of learn and figure out what these trees actually look like, because I don't know anything of what these trees look like. I know what birchwood looks like because I've bought some birchwood from the lumberyard, but I don't know what, like, you know, like this tree behind me here, that's a pretty big guy. You know, I don't know what the heartwood of it looks like because the only birch that I've ever seen is the birch sapwood. I would love to see some birch heartwood, you know, maybe it's different, maybe it's not, but that's the whole goal today, is just to have a little bit of a learning experience and mainly just to get out of the shop for a little while. Oh yeah, and I apologize, in my kind of excitement to get out of the shop this morning, I totally forgot to grab my normal tripods, so I'm gonna be just setting up this little one that I've got with me, just setting up on the ground. So all the angles, I'm gonna look like an absolute giant, or I'm gonna look really minuscule next to all these trees. But yeah, that might explain some of that. Okay, leaf number 1 collected. Actually, I grabbed a couple of them. This was just the one that I labeled. Then on my phone, I took pictures of the leaf, a whole bunch of leaves, the bark, the tree in general, and just kind of get as many different shots as I can. And I put them in a folder labeled tree A. Then on the back of the leaf here, I just wrote A so that I actually kind of have an idea of what I'm dealing with here. So far from what I can tell, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of diversity in the trees that are out here. A lot of the trees look the exact same, but now I can go through and I can start comparing leaves with each other to see if there is any kind of difference between the trees that I'm seeing. Okay, so I pulled over real quick here because as I was driving along, I started to notice there's a whole bunch of these trees that have a completely different leaf style than what I picked before. So they all look very, very spindly and young, but I'm going to collect one of them and just see what the heck it is. You can see that leaf there. It almost looks, if I'm trying, again, I'm very new to the whole trying to identify leaves and trees and all that, but it looks kind of like an ash leaf. So I'm gonna take some pictures of this one and then bring it back with me. Again, the tree here is like super spindly, and most of these ones around me that have the same leaf are, you know, really small, really young trees, but that's just right along the roadway here. So I'm guessing that, you know, hiking a little ways back, you might just find something that's this tree that is a little bit bigger. Okay, at our next stop here, and this area actually has a little bit of sentimental value, or kind of funny sentimental value, because a few years ago when I was working at a camp out here, my sister was getting married, and they they gave me the task of going and finding a log for this weird German tradition at a wedding where the married couple saws a log. So I did the typical younger brother thing, and I came out here to find the biggest log I could possibly could. So this is the same spot that I stopped then to, and I found this big, either birch or aspen, you know, some kind of lighter wood log, and it was huge, like absolutely. I think it was probably a good 10 inches thick. I literally had to dead man drag it all the way back to my truck, or well, I didn't have a truck at the time, I had a little SUV. But yeah, it was pretty intense. And so my hope is that wandering along this trail again, I can find another tree that's, you know, somewhat recently fallen down, and I can just take a small section of it and see what it looks like. And so wandering around here, I think I may have stumbled upon, you know, some kind of realization for myself anyway about how trees grow. So you can see the trees around me right now are mostly coniferous, so they have pine needles on them, and they don't lose those pine needles in the winter. Then if we kind of look to the outer edges of where the pine trees are, where there's more sunlight, that's where you start to get the deciduous trees. So that is definitely something to pay attention to as I'm kind of looking for trees here. Okay, well that explains this road anyway. It goes to what is either a shooting range or a junkyard of some kind. Just looks like some kind of a dumping ground, which is, you know, you always love to see those. So I'm gonna start heading back to the truck now because I don't really see anything super exciting around here. We are gonna pass some kind of trees on the way there, and I'll take a look at them, see if they're anything exciting. So I'm also starting to realize that this might have actually all kind of been pointless, because there's very much so one dominant type of deciduous tree out here, and that is the first ones that we looked at, which I would guess that they're trembling aspens, just because, as you can hear from the wind right now. I don't know if the mic is going to pick that up, but there we go again. So if I understand correctly, again, I'm still pretty new to identifying trees in that, but that's kind of the whole reason trembling aspens got their name, is because in the wind they have that really nice sound to them. And so that seems to be mostly what's out here. Again, I'm totally guessing at what kind of tree it actually is, but that would be my guess if I had to make a guess. Okay, so this is exactly what I've been hoping to find all day. So what we're gonna do is, I have my bow saw here, and we're just gonna try and take a small section out of this tree. Now, it's not a very big piece, so obviously I'm not gonna be building like a bed frame out of it or anything like that, but it's gonna be a good sample to just kind of see what this wood looks like. So this is the exact same as the first tree that we looked at. So if I have a nice section of it that I can mill down and just kind of turn it into wood, I can actually see what this kind of tree would look like if I wanted to use it in a project. Okay, so walking back to the truck, I actually found another one of these trees. It's the same as the one we just cut, but it's about twice as thick around. So I'm gonna cut into it. I want to know whether or not these trees have any kind of like decent heartwood to them, because that's the biggest thing I want to find out here, is whether or not, you know, a more mature tree that has some heartwood in it is more worthwhile compared to, you know, the younger trees that have, you know, that are 90% sapwood. Okay, so after all that work, it doesn't look like we have any like darker colored sapwoods or anything. It's the same kind of light color as the other one. So not a particularly exciting hardwood, but still somewhat interesting and worth taking back to the shop and cutting down. And so to kind of round off our trip out to Waiparous here, this is one of my favorite places to stop when I come out here. It's this little, somewhat hidden waterfall. It's right beside the Waiparous campground, or a little walk away from it. But yeah, it's just this really beautiful little waterfall. And I know I've shown it on video before, but that's when I was back doing a lot of photography stuff. But yeah, you can see just nice, simple little waterfall. All right, so the dog is now happy with going for a swim. I told him this morning before we left that we were gonna go for a swim, and he's been a little bit antsy since. So he's all happy now. I'm gonna let him dry off for a little bit before I let him get into the truck. So we're gonna get those logs back into the shop and break them down, you know, just see what exactly I've got out of them, because I'm just very interested in them. We'll also take a look at those leaves, figure out what type of trees they actually came from, and we're gonna do all that when I actually get back into the shop. Okay, so back in the shop now. Before we cut into those logs, we're gonna go through and look at these 3 leaf samples and figure out what the heck they are. So I wanna thank any of you that are still watching the video up to this point. I know it was a pretty dry one from the beginning. I was definitely expecting that to be a little bit more exciting, you know, going and finding some of the local hardwoods. But for me, it was a super interesting thing to learn, is because I always thought that forests were made up of, you know, a whole bunch of different trees in that. But driving through that area and going and wandering a little bit deeper here and there into it, I very quickly found out that there's only a few different types of trees that really make up that giant forested area. And so the app I'm using here is called Leaf Snap. It's free on the Google Play Store. This is not an ad or anything like that. I don't even know anything about these guys. The app isn't really even that good, but it's free and it functions. So all we're gonna do is just identify, we're gonna take a photo. We get to watch an ad because, of course, ads on free things. American aspen, okay. So it's either aspen, black poplar, Simon poplar, cottonwood. It's most likely a American aspen. That looks exactly like what we've got. So yeah, it's definitely, so aspen, or as we know them around here, trembling aspens. Very likely what we've got there. Okay, so tree B here, the really young ones that we saw along the highway there, is also another either Simon poplar or Western balsam. That looks a lot closer to our leaf there. Yeah, so I would guess that it's a Western balsam, whatever the heck that is. So it's in the same family as like poplars and that. And yeah, native to North America, all that good stuff. Probably, again, not something that is super exciting. Okay, so then our final one here looks like Canadian buffalo berry. Looks like it's the closest one. So that is probably, yeah, that did seem like more of a shrub rather than an actual tree. But it kind of, yeah, it was hard to tell. But yeah, definitely an interesting one. So like I've said a few times, I know that we don't have a whole ton of exciting hardwood trees here in Alberta. Most of what you're going to find is in the poplar family, because that's what grows out here. Because it grows fast, it has deep roots, so it can actually reach water, and they're pretty dang tough. You know, we have a pretty harsh environment out here. It's super dry in the summer, then in the winter we get pretty heavy snow, and it being on the prairies, you know, they're constantly getting hit by wind, all that kind of stuff. So it is a little bit of a harsher environment. And the biggest thing is we just don't have any kind of humidity here. So in general, it's just harder for things like walnut, cherry, maple, you know, big hardwood trees like that to grow out here. So now we're gonna move on to dealing with those 2 logs. We're just gonna try and, you know, square them up, break them down, just get them into some pieces so we can actually see what the wood looks like. Okay, so just from those two pieces, that is a decent amount of wood when you actually think about it. Like that's not a small chunk of wood right there. I mean, it's about 2¼ inches thick by, I believe, 24 inches long, if I remember which board this came from. Yeah, so that is a decent amount of wood, and we're just gonna leave it like this. I sawed all of these pretty thick, except for the pith piece, wherever that went, right there. That one is just a nice little thin one, because that is gonna crack no matter what I do, no matter what I want to have happen. So the one thing I will say about this is that this is the single worst smelling wood that I have ever brought into the shop. Now, I haven't sawn a lot of green wood, mainly just this right now, a little bit of green birch, and then a little bit of that apple wood. None of the wood smells good when you saw it green. It always smells really bad, but this literally smells like burning rubber. To the point where after the first cut, I was sitting there sniffing going, oh crap, I gotta check my bandsaw. Did I just destroy the drive belt? Nope, the drive belt was in perfectly fine condition. So when you actually hold the piece of wood and give it a good sniff, it smells disgusting. So this is definitely not a wood I would recommend. But anyway, this is actually kind of an interesting wood, because you can see that in some areas here, we've actually got a little bit of a flame pattern happening. This is the bigger log that we managed to grab. So it looks like 99% of these logs is heartwood. Now on the bigger log, we did actually start right on the pith here. You can see that some of the heartwood is starting to form. So it's got this really dark red, beautiful heartwood. And if that was a bigger portion of the log, this would be amazing. You know, I would work with that all the time. It's this like beautiful pinkish dark red that's a little bit, you know, it's very similar in tone to cherry. So if that was the whole log, that would be freaking awesome. Most of the log is this kind of off yellowy color that is kind of, you know, that is basically poplar, aspen, you know, cottonwood, all of your poplar family of trees is kind of known for. But overall, these could make some cool accent pieces or some cool turned items. You know, I could make a rolling pin out of one of these and, you know, call it a locally sourced wood and all that kind of thing. But it's not a wood that, like, cutting into it, I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. No, it's just kind of it's a very generic wood. It is very light, which is kind of nice, so it could be good for something there. But it's also, again, not a super exciting type of wood to work with. Now, there are some areas, like the very end of this log here, that you can see it has some amazing color to it. Just there's like, we got all these streaks of just a whole bunch of different colors. But then as soon as you cut about an inch in from that outside edge there, it's completely gone. We're just back to the normal sapwood. So that probably has something to do with the structure of the bark, you know, something like that. It does have a very thick bark, like you can see there. So that probably has something to do with all those beautiful colors that are forming there. So yeah, overall, not a horrible experience cutting that stuff. One thing I do want to mention is anytime you're going to cut green wood on your shop bandsaw, be very careful after you're done and go through and clean out your entire bandsaw, clean all the sawdust off it. Because this sawdust is very wet. Right now, all of these boards are at like a 30 to 40% moisture content. This sawdust is wet. So if you leave it sitting on your cast iron tabletop or on any, you know, your gears, the pulleys, anything like that in the bottom side, or you let it get up and just let it sit on the blade, it's going to start to rust things. And that's really bad for every part of your bandsaw. So make sure you thoroughly go through, clean off all the sawdust. I've already gone through and cleaned mine. The last thing I'm going to do with this stuff before I put it aside is I'm just going to use up some of the spray paint that I used on the plane just to cover up the ends. Because I found with the applewood that the glue combination stuff that I bought from Lee Valley didn't work at all. The wood all still split like crazy. So I want to try using spray paint on the ends here to just seal in that moisture a little bit. And just see if that does any better. So we'll try it out, and I will report back with my findings, because I've heard a lot of people say that just a simple can of spray paint works great for sealing up the ends, or you can go with a whole bunch of other stuff, but spray paint is a pretty cheap option. But that is going to do it for this video, guys. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you have any recommendations on where to find locally sourced hardwoods, I know most of you guys are not in the Calgary area, so you probably can't help me out too much. But if anybody has advice of, you know, places to maybe look, I would really appreciate it. But as always, guys, I do hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.